when the ChatGPT came, it unlocked the possibility where the systems can now understand what you're telling in plain English. So now I don't have to train people. The system knows what is best practice, what is a better way of building. And when executing also the systems, instead of you telling, do these 10 steps, you just say, what is that you want to achieve? And you give all the access. The software starts planning out based on your need, which means if I'm engaging with million members, if they all have different needs, the system can adapt.
Henry, thanks for hopping on today's podcast. Really excited to speak to you and, discuss the innovative work you guys are doing at Ushur. You built high reliability systems throughout your career, from AT&T to Bell Labs. What inspired you to co-found Ushur? What problem were you initially focused on solving?
There are always a different storyline for every entrepreneur, but there is some, unique aspects in the journey. Definitely, coming from a background that you mentioned, right? Part of building the AT&T switch, massive switches these are, and, switching high volumes, and those are phone calls, right? That is an important aspect because coming out of Bell Labs also was part of the whole wave of something called soft switch. For the first time, purely software, because it wasn't until that time it was a switch which was just software, right? It wasn't the case before because there were a lot of proprietary systems and all that, right? So I was part of that movement as well. But at the time when we were coming out, the voice calls were going down, especially now we are nearing Mother's Day. We were talking about it, in the AT&T hallways, it was always about talks about Mother Day. There's a lot of collect calls, a lot of statistics floating around about voice calls. But there was also talk about how voice calls were going down and messaging was on the rise, right? The texting, we call it, right? So I think before this startup, I was part of another startup, which was another soft switch company. But primarily to start this one was particularly because at that time, we are talking about literally, a decade back and all that, smartphones, the smart devices were on the rise and people were texting each other, let's say messaging and through different apps and all that. So we were looking at it and wondering, hey, if people are texting each other and people are more comfortable texting than phone calling, because it is usually getting more and more results for very personal interactions and all that. We knew that enterprises in general, right, have to do something about it sooner or later, right? They cannot expect people to always, only have to make a phone call. And we all know how notorious that can get. Those used to be the systems, far worse than today, right? Press 1, 2, and so many steps. And you have to continue all over again. And you have to hold your breath that the line doesn't disconnect it. All kind of things, right? And we know how many, whether it's a utility company or internet service provider, it's always a bad experience most often. And, we've seen all that. But that's when we decided, hey, we have to give a better experience for a modern customer who's always on the move with a smart device. They probably don't want to get caught up with the device, holding on the device, right, for a phone call. So that's the underpinning, the timing, and of course, certain frustrations in being part of another company where things were not done right. Let's do it better, right? And also, bring a good thing to the society. All combined led to this Ushur.
Interesting. And so right now, I know you mentioned that you've gone from your extensive experience with the switchboards, like you call them, with like phone-based
Switching systems, yeah.
switching systems.
Yeah.
What is the main channel right now for this AI that you're building at Ushur?
Yeah. AI has always been there in a sense in our DNA when we started building. But to start with, we just used texting. Automation was at the heart of the system because what we knew was, I told you earlier that how customer experience was the starting point. We wanted to bring that compelling experience to end users. The other aspect is what is the side of the enterprise? And we realize if you want to give a compelling experience at scale, we are talking millions, consistently better experience, it has to be automated because human experience, we know it is good, but it's hard to be consistent for simple reasons. We
Right.
have mood changes, we can fall sick, whatever, right? So we are humans. So it is only in automating those best experiences we can scale. So one end, it was automation, other end is customer experience. That's one of the reasons why we were part of the new category called CXA, which is customer experience automation, right? Combined. There are many automation systems alone, but for them, the customer experience is always an afterthought. But for us, customer experience was the starting point. And then we had to automate to bring that compelling experience. experience at scale, right? So to start with, what we did was we just used phone numbers. So that's all we asked the enterprise. You must be having phone numbers to engage, and we'll take care of texting, not one way, but two way. So, which means you can literally reach anybody in the world. But there is a problem. That is, while humans can text each other, a system in a cloud or something, it cannot text you with because of legal reasons.
Right.
So to start with, as a channel, it was just plain short messaging, SMS networks. That's how it started, and then went on to even doing voice or WhatsApp, and now it is more like you have because of thanks to all the chat GPT, which started off the whole LLM trend, language models. Now it can be a chatbot because chatbots now can really offer better service than their earlier incarnation where it couldn't meet those requirements, quality requirements. So different modalities, different channels. There's no limit. We can plug and play new channels. Just to address that particular question. Yeah, sorry, it took a long there.
It's fascinating. I know you called it CXA as like the category of the work,
Yes.
but it's pretty fascinating the evolution from phone, you said to voice, WhatsApp, chatbots, like you can really
Yes.
plug and play in any
Mm-hmm.
channel, which is
Yeah.
pretty fascinating. Clearly Usher is known for you guys have like automated complex customer journeys across many industries, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
what makes healthcare uniquely challenging? And like how have you adapted your platform and what you're building to meet like healthcare needs?
Yeah, yeah. It's an interesting question. In fact, when we started the company and we were trying to take it to the market, right, go to market strategies, the fintech wave had just finished and the insurtech wave was starting. So we knew that the experience we were bringing, in a way, was impacting the contact systems or contact centers, call centers, contact centers, because we are trying to take away those phone calls, avoid those phone calls with a better experience, more apt experience for the modern day, right? So naturally, our first point was insurance companies because they deploy massive call centers, right? So to start with insurance itself, we had to be compliant, right? Because the data has to be protected. We already started looking at the PII and PHI, right? Even in
Mhm.
those days, right? So start with the personal identifiable information and personal health information to be
Right.
exact. So going with the insurance companies, already we had to become compliant many ways. But coming to healthcare, if you talk to many even investors, it's always a scary proposition. Good, don't go to healthcare, right?
Yeah.
So
Everyone
fortunately,
told them healthcare, but until they start building, they're like, "Oh man, that's like yeah." Then
so
they're
they've had some experiences, right? How long it takes and adoption and all that. But fortunately for us, the timing was good. As much as people think, hey, these are slow moving industries, relatively speaking, right? You can compare with e-commerce to regulated industry, but now they are much faster adoption than it used to be, a decade or even back. Because there's a lot of forcing function, as we have seen. Computing has increased. Everybody knows about AI. It's not even an option. We know that, right? And now we have AI agent, and it's only keep moving forward, right? The question is not of if, it's about how and when or how do I do it? That is the question everybody's asking. So healthcare, particularly what happened is because we started with the engagement aspect, there are a lot of areas of healthcare, starting with the payer and then provider. The payer side, there was a lot of traction on reaching the member engagement. So particularly our notion of micro engagement, making it easy for members, right? Not to have all these complicated portals and logins and all that. Much secure way of doing it. So healthcare was very amenable. And then considering that we were already playing in regulated industries, right? Like not only insurance, we already had customers in Europe, which means you're talking about GDPR regulation, you have to be satisfied, everything, right? So we had built a particular practice in that. So we knew that high trust was an important one. While we were HIPAA compliant, you had to get the certification. So we moved from being for SMS like TCPA compliance and SOC 2, and then doing HIPAA compliant, but to certify, because healthcare, you can't engage in conversation without being high trust certified. And high trust is a very tough endeavor when we compare to others because it was like minimum a year and a half, and not to mention the money you have to put into it, commitment and all that. But we did it, and we did, and now we are doing audits, right? It's not just compliance and you get it once, you have to get audited, right? A year or 2 year, once in 2 years.
right.
So we are doing that. So I think those were the journeys with all the difficulties, but still, and our customers were looking at us with seriousness because we were already doing, insurance and all that. So those are the foundational aspects of us getting into
Yeah,
healthcare.
yeah. Oh, I like that. It basically sounds like healthcare was like the natural next fit for you guys where
Because our platform, right, about was horizontal. We are not a vertical platform because we built it for many. It should be generic for many industries to go, multiple verticals. We started with insurance and all that. Then healthcare was the next vertical. But as we see, there is so much here itself, so much deeper we can go and harvest. So we are still in insurance, healthcare, and financial services. These are the three we play heavily today.
yeah, right on. I love that nugget. We're a horizontal platform, not a vertical platform.
Yeah.
And so for the non-as technical viewers, like, can you just break down the difference between your traditional AI? Because I think when people hear AI, they jump to like your chat GPTs, your consumer facing applications versus what you guys are doing are these
Yeah.
building are these AI agents, these agentic agents, as you call them on your
Yeah.
website. Can you
Yeah.
break that
Agent.
down, what that means in like simple
Yeah,
terms?
yeah. When we started, there are two persona, right? End users, consumers, members, policyholders, everyone, right? You and me, right? Basically, right? And the other end is the enterprise, right? Who we are selling our systems to, right? Now, what is the notion of software? How are they going to, let's say, even launch campaigns, engage with members, and do other forms of automation? Because Ushur is unique in the sense we do not only engagement, we also do back-end knowledge work. What that means is we can understand all the email contents, your documents, loan forms, accord forms, everything. So we do both. And the reason why we did both was we knew that as a user, you're not just only on engaging, but you are also giving your information and it has to be processed in the backend. And if I do only one, it won't be a seamless end to end experience. So we all know, right? We can put a form in and something is incorrect and they have to chase you in phone call. Doesn't make sense. So if I am having a good experience of uploading, interacting a form, and let's say I'm done, in the same way, they should be able to reach with a simple message and say, hey, this part is missing, this
Right.
information is missing. I should be able to go while on the move, right? So I think that was the whole vision, right? So we had to do both. So the enterprise software, how is it? Should we do it traditionally where we have to keep, sending them software to do things? Or what if we enable the enterprise to do it themselves?
Mhm.
Because we knew the future is going to be fast moving, where they should not expect us, but rather do it themselves with their own, members or anything, right? So that's where the whole workflow based and no code, today it's a hype, right? That time it was not a hype or anything. We just made it as a workflow base. So now we have either customers, their own developers, right? Their IT or their citizen developers, any form, right? Depending on complexity they want, they can build it on top of a platform and launch campaigns or do automation, right? So now we have, at the end of the day, the humans are doing it still, right? So our true north, right, Bert, was faster time to value realization. That was our true north, is a true north always. We choose technology, we harness technology not for technology's sake, but always we ask this question: is it going to shrink the time it takes for us to give them anything, to give our customers anything, and for our customers to deploy and realize value? As long as it keeps shrinking, we will adopt it, right? So now I talked about the workflow. You still have to manually create the workflow. There is a good way of doing it. There's a not so great way of doing it. So it may not be consistent, and you have to enable them with the documentation, all that. That was the time when we did the workflow originally, right? 10 years back it was.
Right, right.
Move forward. When we are doing texting, I was telling you, and users, right? We used to send press 1 2 3 or enter 1 2 3. Sometimes they'll invariably type something because they want to express, even in a simple
Mhm.
texting. How do you understand that? To understand what you texted me, you need to build some form of a machine learning. There comes AI.
Mm.
So AI had to start processing the user's information and all that, right? So we had to put AI in bits and pieces everywhere in the workflow, wherever it was needed. So AI started as being used at points in the whole workflow in services, right? When you're giving to member at certain places. That's how AI started. And similarly, in document processing and extracting data, it started like that. It was not pervasive. It was in different places, but it was not taking control over. Now, when we come back and say, okay, now you're creating workflows and you're deploying, still taking time, right? There can be errors. How do I bring in all the best practices? That's when this ChatGPT, there were a lot of work. We also were using some of the models that were there even prior to all the ChatGPT launch. This was like different models, even using underlying, as they call, transformer models. To say simple term, when the ChatGPT came, it unlocked the possibility where the systems can now understand what you're telling in plain English. That's why they say the new programming language is English, right? So you just say it, system understands. So that barrier was broken thanks to all the computing and the GPUs and everything, algorithms, everything. Good timing, it was done. So for us, what that meant is we can take all the best practices and train the model. So now I don't have to train people. The system knows what is best practice, what is a better way of building. So that is the adoption where now AI comes and says, you know what, you just tell me what to do, I'll do it. Instead
Yeah.
of you telling in 100 steps, you just tell what is needed. So that's the notion of agent has come. And when executing also the systems, instead of you telling, do these 10 steps, you just say, what is that you want to achieve? And you give all the access. The software starts planning out based on your need, which means if I'm engaging with million members, if they all have different needs, the system can adapt. How much can you put in a manually created workflow? You can't. But these intelligent systems know your goal and they can plan it out.
Yeah.
That's the agentic.
Interesting. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I heard two things there. One, that you guys were enabling enterprise to do it themselves, and doing no code before it was cool to do that, and before.
Yes.
So you guys have been in that early. And the second thing is you broke down these agentic agents as essentially going beyond just workflows or doing 10 different steps. It's like, hey, I want to achieve X, and it helps you get to Y, like,
Exactly. And playing in regulated industry, you have to be a lot more careful. It's not just you build a chatbot and deploy, right? So we had to do all the
right,
guardrails, advise it in a particular playground, if you will, and that's how it operates. So it's a lot
right,
of
right.
work to be done, but that's a whole, modern world of
Yeah.
in the AI agents. Yeah.
So fill me in on some of those like use cases. Like, what are you seeing as the most promising use cases for healthcare with
Yeah.
Ushur's AI? And for example, like, how are health plans deploying them today?
Before, this readiness for chatbot was there, Asha was very widely deployed for outbound campaigns, going and reaching out members, right? Advising, for example, simple things like Medicare redetermination. These are very cyclic, right? During certain periods of time, you immediately have to launch
Very
campaigns
cyclical.
to thousandth year, right? So
Right.
that one, and then our whole design is very journey based, right from onboarding. At any point in time, you may have healthcare inquiry or claims, even, right? And then
Yeah.
pre-authorization
Yeah.
procedures. So any interaction questionnaire, right? Form filling, and so that's how we go. So when we go to our customers, they always go with the low-hanging fruit, and then they go one use case at a time. And so, as you know, it is always a journey, right? Any healthcare members, they start with one and keep going towards the other. Right now, with the AI agent being launched as a chatbot, this is more inbound because the customers can come anytime and have their queries addressed rather than a phone call. So if you see some of the queries, it is always about their health plans, concerns, and then they have some questions about, hey, I have diabetes, what do I do? What other guidance? So now, rather than the traditional search, now the systems have become so smart where it can be very empathetic, understanding, and be able to reason and give an apt response for them.
Mm.
So common use cases are like updating address, downloading a medical ID card. I want to change my PCP, on and on, things like that. Those are, so it's a lot of self-service at the end of the day.
It really caters to the member's journey, like you're saying, whether it's
Yeah.
needing prior authorization for something or wanting to download a medical ID card or change
Yeah.
PCP. It's really
Yes.
around for the
And you
health
can
plans
see, right, you
of
are avoiding all the phone calls. It would be
right,
like,
right. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. No, there'll come a world where, you're interacting with agentic like agents everywhere, and like
Yes,
there's large
yes.
language models built into just about like any software you're using day to day,
Yeah, yeah.
we're going to get to that point. I do
I mean,
believe
that's
that.
why many of the places, right, even they say Google instead of Google search. I mean, it's been many months now since I did Google search because we're all in,
Yeah.
other tools, right? Other AI
Yeah.
tools,
Yeah.
because it's like, ask me anything. And they give you a very summarized, even Google
Yeah.
search gives you a summary, right? You
Right.
look at the
Right.
summary and you move on. Yeah.
Right. Right. Exactly. No, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a pretty fascinating times we're living in. And
It
now,
is. It is.
like, both you and I are on board on like the power this has and how it could help your clients and customers and their end users. But what are, some of the biggest adoptions, barriers to adoption?
Yeah.
Whether that's IT, clinical, compliance. You mentioned earlier high trust being really important for healthcare.
hmm
What are those biggest barriers to adoption, and how are you helping your partners overcome them?
Yeah, agentic and all that, it's a new paradigm. The reason I'm saying is just because we data handling, protection, the early days, right? PHI information, that is one thing. But here, the system is smart. I don't want the system to say something which we did not intend to, right? So now that is a different paradigm. So your test, that's why, right? You might develop things faster, but you have to do 10x times the testing. So how smart are you going to do that, right? How are you going to put the guardrails? How do you design that system, right? So in many of our testing, you will see, interestingly, there will be healthcare and suddenly people will ask, hey, can I buy a flight ticket? Just to test the system, right? How smart it is
Yeah, yeah,
and how it addresses too, right? Saying, hey, I am meant for this. And so you train that. And it's possible, but if you do it properly, meticulously. So the concerns are just that for the adoption. Does it have any bias is one thing, right? It should not be inclined towards one or the other. Is it giving a recommendation that we should not be, right? So one end is to look at what are the services I want to convey. That's one. But second is how does it convey it? In what manner? The language it uses, and also it should be able to not only avoid delivering any toxic language, obviously, but also be able to take such toxic language. We don't know what frustration people will come and say, right? So you have to protect the system also. At the same time, not entertain things and not respond to things if it was
right.
said differently, because we don't know, right? People may be in different circumstances. So all
Mhm.
that, and I think those are the questions are usually asked, those are the concerns. So from being protecting data, now we are talking about runtime behaviors by a system, right? So
Right.
yeah, those are the obstacles for others to do these things, because and for us, interestingly, we are well prepared precisely because we were in regulated industry. That is why we are, because now if anybody has to do agentic, not only in regulated industry, any industry, you have to take care of these things. Otherwise, even in an e-commerce, it may go really completely, on unexpected route. So for
Right.
us, it's kind of being already in regulated positions as well.
Yeah. No, yeah, you
Yeah.
guys have that level of expertise that really gave you a step up in
Yeah.
this arena. Now, where do you like see this going next with agentic agents and this type of AI for like industries like healthcare? I know you talked about member engagement, but where does it go next from here? Is
Yeah.
it mass
Yeah.
adoption of agentic agents? Is it, more self-service? Is it more selectivity around what's being built, more testing, like you're saying? A
Yeah.
lot of,
Yeah.
where do you see that going next?
Well, from a broad scope, because we started the company with the end users in mind, right? Society at large. I think from self-service, it's going towards autonomous service. So today self-service requires you to go and ask, right? It's like we always give the example of ATM machine. You have to go and still withdraw the money, right?
Right.
But I don't know whether that will change automatically getting delivered. That not a cash,
Right.
but in healthcare self-service, from self-service to autonomous service means because the system is smart, even you are not there asking things, it already knows what is required and it's working on your behalf and doing what it needs to do on your behalf because you have already told it. So this is where it will evolve, where there will be touch points to ask a human like, hey, you asked for something, are you okay or not? To accept or not. But otherwise, it is already acting on your behalf. That's where
Yeah.
it becomes autonomous. So you don't have to continuously come and ask.
I'm wondering, are you guys starting to build in some of those autonomous service areas? Like, what, if you don't mind, for the audience, like throwing out one or two of those just to get a sense of
Yeah,
where
yeah.
we're starting to see that being built,
Yeah, some classic, I can tell you, I mentioned about update address, right? See, let's assume you're updating your address and some glitches there, some problem is there in the system, right? Let's assume that. Today you have to redo it again. But these autonomous systems, they already have your information. So what they'll tell you is, we will notify you when it is done. You don't have to worry. We already got the information.
Okay.
That's the level. So it might even take an hour because the system is down, but it will finish that job and then come back to you and say, hey, the address is updated. That's
Interesting.
the autonomy you're talking about.
It's interesting how kind of history repeats itself. We went from focusing on workflows to agentic agents, and then now the agentic agents get so smart that you have to focus on, and now we want to go to fully autonomous and need to focus on what are those workflows that need to be fully autonomous.
Fully
It's kind of
autonomous, yes. You
yeah,
always find out because it's not like AI for everything. There are certain things which is really be efficient if you use AI or AI agents or agentic. Yes, yeah.
right. And that line is like delineated. When you go scope a new project, like is this full blown is this an agentic agent A or and B, how much of this is autonomous, fully autonomous versus like self-served, like
Yes,
it'll
yes.
it'll
Uh,
depend, right, on
it will
the
depend
use
on the
case.
use case, the scope
Yeah.
of the use case. That's where you design it smartly so it can do it automatically, right? Otherwise, you will have to determine. You're still having people determine. So,
Right,
yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah,
Super interesting. But yeah,
yeah.
that's fascinating. And so for, the health plans out there or provider leaders who are listening and thinking like, this is what we need. We're ready to start building some agentic agents, whether they're self-service, autonomous, like how can they connect with you and your team at Usher online and learn more or engage with you guys?
Yeah, I mean, of course, we are Ushur.ai, ushur.ai. We are right there. I can be reached directly, and I know the marketing team is always there. Mostly, they're all outbound reach and all that. So, yeah, mine is henry.peter@ushur.com. I'm a reach. Otherwise, Ushur.ai, you have all the information to reach there. I think that your part of your question was also how to think about, and there are many ways to get in, right? But the important thing is you have to put your hands to it or engage the see one of the reasons why what Usher does is because we don't take too long. It's not like a year-long project. It's always like you come, we do it faster. That's why they come to us, right? We make it realize faster. Even something doesn't work for you, you still have to test it out with your member base, your demographics, right?
Right.
You have to try it, and you don't want to try it for a year, right? So when you come to companies like Usher, it's a matter of 3 months. You can even get to know these things. And also, even if it's AI agent, not all use cases have to be member facing. Sometimes it's for providers. What we do is it's very internal facing, which means your risk factor is very less. You're not touching members. For example, they may be on a phone call giving answers, but now they have to go through n number of documents. What we provide is a simple Q&A, right? Ask and give intelligent results, and you can address the member on a phone call, even on a phone. So, which means you are actually using AI and AI agents for serving you, but not the end members yet. So you can test that way. That way you get
Interesting.
comfortable. You learn a lot. Yeah. So
Serving the end user without them knowing they're being served, essentially. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. It's a
I
more
love
faster
that.
service,
There's
more
levels
apt.
to
Yep.
that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Yep.
there's ways to serve them directly, but ways to they get served without them knowing like
Yeah.
that. Like that's a
Exactly.
perfect example.
Yeah.
Yeah. We talked about how they reach you, but how long does it take to typically, again, it probably depends on the use case, but like I know you
Yeah.
mentioned time to value and time to realize value is important to you. On average, like how long does it take to like get an agent off the ground from like start to finish?
Oh, yeah. So I mean, typically enterprise have their own, the way when you start first touch point with an enterprise, because any enterprise, they have to go through the infosec and all that. That time is always, right? That's just the large enterprise. We play with large enterprises. It takes their own time. Not because of us. It's just the whole process of going through, navigating through the buying process, anything, right? Even to get started with protecting data and all that. That is but the once, let's say there is a commit and they want to have an access to our system, we are talking about few weeks, and maximum is like 3 months. You can have a deployment literally with crossing out everything, test your internal testing, development testing, finally production. You can go in 3 months, but we have
That's
done it
fast.
in matter of
Yeah.
3 weeks, 4 weeks. Yeah,
That's really fast. That's faster than, most marketing campaigns just take, to realize value. So
yeah,
you're
yeah,
talking a whole
yeah.
agentic agent and
Yes,
potentially once it's approved, right, and you get system access and
yeah,
the security is in place, I
yeah.
imagine it, but a few weeks to
And
even
there are
three
so
months.
many
Yeah.
templates to choose from. That's why, I mean, it can get faster based on your use case. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's fascinating. Well, Henry, it was a pleasure having you on the podcast today. I love the work you guys are doing. I'm definitely gonna have to, you know, keep tabs on the work you guys are doing. And this is a space that I'm sure will evolve 2 years from now. We'll be looking back and thinking how silly we were that we were just narrow-minded on autonomous service for agentic agents, because we will probably reach something, you in a few years. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's
and
moving
yeah,
pretty fast, actually. Yes. Day by
yeah.
day. Yeah.
But it was a pleasure speaking to you, and I appreciate having you on today. And I think the viewers will enjoy this one.